Hello, my name is Chess Moore. This is my video walkthrough of my Computer Science 10A final project. My final project I decided was going to be me coding the card game Skip-Bo by Mettel, or my variation of it. The rules to the game are listed here. I will not go over them in detail because I kind of want this video to go by fast. It asks how many players you want to play with. I thought 4 was going to be the fastest, and I also chose a low stockpile amount. The object of the game is for your stockpile to be empty. The stockpile is a deck of cards that you're dealt. I guess I do have to go over some of the rules. There's a deck of 162 cards. The deck contains 12 cards of each value 1 through 12, with an additional 18 Skip-Bo cards, which can be played as any value. There are 4 build piles in front of you. Each build pile has to be built within sequential order. So you have to start with either a 1 or a Skip-Bo, and then you have to play a 2, a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, etc., all the way to 12. Once the build pile is hit 12, it shuffles back into the deck, and you continue playing until, again, someone's stockpile is empty. You always begin your turn by drawing up to 5, but if you draw a Skip-Bo card, you get to draw an additional card, which kind of helps the game go by a little faster. So every player's turn is going to kind of start off with this little banner. It's going to tell you what the build pile statuses are. Here they're all empty. What the top of your stockpile is. Oh, this is a 12, which means you have to go 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 12. And this player doesn't have anything else. Doesn't have a 1, so they can't make any plays. So they immediately move to the discard option, which ends your turn. You can make as many plays as you want. Only discarding ends your turn. And so here we discard the second card from our hand, which is the 9. Player 2. Here we drew a Skip-Bo, which means we have 1 extra card. We decided to play from our hand the first card, which is our Skip-Bo, to the first build pile. So then it goes back to the player 2 banner. It has a new updated build pile Skip-Bo. Here it tells you the value of that Skip-Bo card. Here it's a 1. I don't have any more legal plays for this player, so I discard the third card in my hand, which is the 10. And here's someone, here I got to play from my stockpile. The 2 goes on top of the 1. So I hit play stockpile, and I added my stockpile to 1, and then it's still player 3's turn. It's updated. Oh, I had a Skip-Bo card, play, stockpile, the second build pile. So I play the Skip-Bo. You can play Skip-Bo on top of any pile, basically. It always adds up. So that Skip-Bo, oh sorry, the build pile was 2. So I decided to build this one. So Skip-Bo became 2. Play hand, and so the game continues thusly, and you can play from your hand, you can play from your discard pile. If your hand empties, you draw back up to 5 on your turn, and you continue to get to play. All that's very nice. Here are player 3. I only have 2 left in my stockpile. The top card is 11, so here's me actually playing. So here I decided to play. I'm going to play from my stockpile, and I'm going to add, because there's only the top card of my stockpile, I don't need to pick from my hand. So I'm going to add 11 to the top, which is an 11, or which was a 10, so it is now, which was a 10, which is now an 11, and awesome, the last card of my Skip-Bo and my stockpile is a Skip-Bo. So player 3 wins the game as long as I type in the words correctly. So I'm going to hit play. I'm going to play from my stockpile, and I'm going to play that 1 to 1. And what you notice is it plays out the rest of the players' turns to kind of see who gets. It plays out the rest of the players' turns until player 1 again to see if there's a second place. What's great is that after a build pile hits 12, it automatically re-empties. Player 4 is not anywhere close to winning, so we're just going to discard 1. And it gives you the win condition. Alright, let's move on to the code. So this is what it looks like. I've got 3 objects and then the main code. The first object is a player object. The main crux of the player object is this shell. It's basically just a shell for these 3 array lists. But it does also keep track of the player turn count and whether or not the player has won. I have some get and set methods for the win condition. I have something that keeps track of that you can always get the turn count from. And if you want to alter the turn count, the The only thing it does is it goes up, so I made a go up method, and then get methods for each one of the piles. That little readout that you see at the beginning of each one of your turns, top of player, all this player information is just this print method, which is really nice. Here's the card object. We have done this a million times in the class, so there should really not be anything interesting here. If you make a no argument constructor, random card between 1 and 13, I'm using 13 as the wild card, as I state here in the comments. This is the explicit constructor, which I use to make the deck. Here's the get value method, set value method. Print into string are practically this interchangeable. I don't think I ever used the print method. This is going to look really silly, but I talked to Tom, and I think it is an elegant solution from what my problem was. Basically, I needed to make an array of array lists, and I now know the syntax for that, but it would require me to rewrite a bunch of code. So my workaround was make an array list an object, so that way I can make an array of array lists, and it does what I need it to. Here's the main code. The main things we're keeping track of are how many players there are, how big the stockpile is. These integers I use for picking your pile. They kind of help index which part of your hand or which pile that you're pointing at. And this is my game round, which helps keep track of whose turn it is. I use file importer. I'm obviously using lots of array lists with all these decks and the scanner so that you can put input into it. Here's the rules banner. There's a do while for how many players between 2 and 4. Here's another do while. Anytime there's a player input, there's pretty much a do while. Here's the player object array of the players, known as player list. There's always going to be 2 players, so these always get initialized. 3 and 4 get initialized if they are needed. Then it runs through that array of player lists objects, and it gets their hand and their stockpile, and it deals their stockpile and deals their hand. Here's my silly business. Here's an array of objects that are just array lists, so that I can basically have an array of array lists. This is the chunk of the code here. This is pretty much the player's turn, is this statement right here. In the original iteration of this code, I had it printed out 4 times, 1 for each player, until I figured out how to make the better way of doing it, putting it into an array. Here's the player's turn. Here's showing the build piles. Here's all the player list information. That big chunk that you see every turn is pretty much just this line. And then here are all the if statements of what you want to do. So if you hit play, if you type play, you're prompted with one of these 3 responses. Here is the stockpile answer and code. Once you pick the stockpile, it asks you to pick from which pile. So let's take a look at that method really quick. Here it is at the bottom, pile pick. Which build pile would you like to look at? I could have had this in there, but it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines of code. It's 5 lines of code that is done for each one of the play options for picking a pile, so I just decided to make it a method. So let's breeze through the rest of this code and then just go on to the rest of it. Here's stockpile, pick a pile. It checks to see if the card is valid or not. If the card is valid, then it removes the card from the stockpile. And then if the stockpile is 0, then the player win condition is set to true. The discard pile, same thing. Pick a pile, check if it's true. Same thing with hand, except that we have this hand pick line of code. Which card in your hand would you like to pick? That hand pick helps index which card in your hand from the array list you want to check against the build pile that you're currently selecting as well. If it's valid, remove. And if your hand runs out, you get to draw 5 again. So we do that same fill hand method that you got from initializing. You can make as many legal plays as you want until you go to the discard pile. Then this else statement triggers when you type in discard, and it begins your end turn. Same thing, pile pick, or sorry, not pile pick, hand pick. Which card from your hand would you like to discard? Discards the card from the hand, and then it fills your hand at the end of your turn, but you don't really get to use it. And then it ups your player count. Then this is the do while that says, okay, if you haven't hit this else statement, which ups your turn counter, then you still get to play. But if it does go up, then it is now the same as the game round. So this for loop triggers, which moves the player number up 1, so then it goes to player 2, etc., all the way to as many players as there are. But this while statement is also stopped if someone won. And then there's an if statement. If no one has won, then up the game round. But if someone has won, then we go to the next. Then we go to the last do while, which is the win condition checker. Without this do while, it would just up the game round, but it wouldn't continue the. You basically would only get one cycle of the turn. So that's why this do while exists. And then if you win, checks which player won, which player got their win condition set to win, and then prints it. We have a make deck array. This is straight out of the assignments, pretty much. I have a text file called gosh, where is it? I have a text file of card values, 1 through 12, and then the 13s are the wild skippos. Fill stock. This is just deal, so there's a deal method. Fill hand. This is only something that's kind of spicy. If you've drawn a skippo, basically, you get to draw an extra card. That's what this wild is. So that's how you get 1 to 5. Here's the deal method. Pretty standard. Here's me checking whether or not the card is valid. If it's a 13 or the skippo, it's always valid, and you'll always add the build pile to that card. And then it checks to see if the build pile is full, which is a method, so it basically says if the size is 12, then empty. Here it is. If the size is 12, empty the build pile into the deck, empty the current card in the build pile, and then put that card into the deck. Here's just a method for showing the 4 build piles. Here's the display for whether or not a build pile is empty, or if it shows the value, or if it's a 13, then it wants to show what the value of the 13 would be, which is very conveniently correlated with its size. Here's a new line method. Here's the player winner method. Conflict method. Alright, I think that pretty much sums it up. Hopefully you have fun playing it. Sometimes the game can go by really quick, sometimes the game can go really long. Sometimes it feels like whoever gets the most skippos is lucky, but that's the fun of the game. Hope you enjoyed playing it. Yeah, and I hope it all looks cool. Thank you so much for playing, and I hope you have a great rest of the day.